measuring variables, measuring the IV and the DV, if you don't have the measurement of the IVs and the DV, you cannot bring those into a graph to understand the relationship between those two. So we have to measure. In this conceptual framework, the usual one we use blood sugar and the exercise with the food. So blood sugar is the DV and exercise and the food are the IVs. You have to measure this so that you can bring those measurement, those indicators in a graph. Then we can understand the relationship between those variables. Now you can measure the blood sugar using a glucometer. It will give you the number 115, 150, 170, 200, 300, 500, whatever the number. You can get those in numbers. And exercise also, you can measure them in terms of the length of distance that you have walked, or duration of time you have walked, or number of steps that you have walked, or maybe the calories that you have burnt using some electronic gadgets. That is possible. So we can measure exercise, and you can put that exercise that you have done and the blood sugar that you have against on that particular day. So we can get some graph. And food as well, we can measure. If you take a can of food, of some nutritious food, you can measure how much food inside in terms of grams or in terms of calories. Even if it is other food like potato chips or burgers or whatever, we can measure those in terms of certain numbers, some weight or some calories. So it is possible for you to measure these in numbers, and you can put them in a graph like this. Well, you can measure the blood sugar in numbers 100, 150, 200 and so on. And you can measure the exercise in terms of the number of steps that you walked, or the duration that you walked, or the calories you burnt. Yes. And if it is about food, you can measure them in calories or grams. That's fine. But the problem is, if it is job satisfaction, motivation, leadership, culture, customer satisfaction, consumer preferences, stress level, happiness, if you want to measure these kind of variables, how are you going to do? This is where we talk about the indicators, because you can't measure job satisfaction straight away, but we can use some indicators indirectly to measure job satisfaction. Let's see how. We'll take an example this time, which we all know and we all use at home. Temperature. We'll take your body temperature. Body temperature is a variable. It is a dependent variable based on the fever you have. So when the fever goes up and down, your temperature goes up and down. Now we have to measure temperature. How do you measure temperature? There are no straightaway direct number reading for temperature. What we use is the expansion of mercury in a glass tube. The mercury will indicate the temperature of your body, because we assume matters expands with increasing temperature. The expansion of mercury in this tube, in this thermometer, is the indicator that will give the readings of your temperature. So the same principle is applied for any other variables if you want to measure. I have a conceptual framework here: knowledge and the earnings. Do knowledge have any relationship with the earnings of some individual? If you want to study this, you have to measure the earnings as well as the knowledge. Now the challenge is how to measure the knowledge. To measure the knowledge, as we all know, I give you 2 questions. Each question deserves 50 marks, and you write your answers for the first question and the second question in words. And I read those words, your answers, and I convert those words into numbers, and I give you 30 marks for the first question and 35 marks for the second question. So you have scored 65 marks altogether, and that is your knowledge. So 65 is your knowledge. And the earnings, I can measure earnings in terms of salary. So I can put them in sterling pounds. Bonus, I can again put them in sterling pounds. Allowances, of course, yes, sterling pounds. So I can put all of those together. Those sterling pounds will indicate how much do you earn. Now I can study the relationship between the knowledge you have and the earnings that you deserve with that knowledge. So I can decide whether the knowledge has some relationship with the earnings or not. Let me bring one more example to understand this even further, how to use indicators to measure factors. Now in this conceptual framework, some company is suffering from sales and they have declining sales. So they want to study whether the customer satisfaction is connected to the sales. If they find out yes, they can do something about to improve the customer satisfaction so they can improve the sales. So to do this, you have to measure both customer satisfaction, that is the IV, and the DV, the sales as well. So how can you measure customer satisfaction? There is no measuring tape, there is no scale or there is no gadgets to measure customer satisfaction, but you can use indicators. I'm suggesting three. Number one is the customer complaints, how many complaints a customer make, and the repurchasing, how much amount a customer spent in your company to do some repurchasing again and again, and then how much refund that you make for a customer. If you can get all of this, you can get all of this in numbers or in sterlings, and these indicators will give you the numeric value of your customer satisfaction. On the other side of the conceptual framework, we can measure the sales. Sales can be measured in terms of the revenue, so sterling pounds, and inventory you have. How many things are sold and how many things are still left in the shelves of your store. So this inventory analysis would give you the sales. And the sales unit, number of units sold, these are all indicators that will indicate your sales. And if you can put all of this together, you can get the numeric value for sales as well. Now you have the numeric value for sales and the customer satisfaction. Bring that to a graph and you study the relationship between the customer satisfaction and the sales. And if you study the relationship, positive or negative or whatever, we can make some decision based on this. Right, now it's time for homework. In this conceptual framework, productivity is the DV of a company. They are very underproductive. And you have found out the independent variables to be work environment, leadership, and the rewards. Now, how can you measure productivity? What are the indicators? How can you measure work environment, leadership, and the rewards? Have an idea, develop your indicators, and show it to me in the next lecture.